You're listening to Boomers Today with your host, Frank Sampson.
Well, welcome to Boomers Today. I'm your host, Frank Sampson. And of course, each week we bring you important and very useful information on issues facing baby boomers, their parents, and other loved ones. We have another great show for you this week. And, it's because we were able to bring on such wonderful guests due to your support. Many of you are listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spreaker, Stitcher. I want to just thank everybody for sharing many of our podcasts with friends and family. Some of you go to our website at boomerstodayradio.com. So again, thank you so much. And we're not going to disappoint you today. We have another wonderful guest that I'm really looking forward to speaking with. His name is Larry Gifford. Larry is president and co-founder of PD Avengers. He was diagnosed with young-onset Parkinson's disease in August of 2017 at the age of 45. Larry is active with Parkinson's Society British Columbia and sits on the board of directors for the Pacific Parkinson's Research Institute. He believes in the power of storytelling, hosting When Life Gives You Parkinson's, a podcast that documents his experience living and working with Parkinson's disease, which was a finalist for the Canadian Podcast Awards. Larry, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us on Boomers Today. Really appreciate it.
Hey, Frank, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Boy, you got that radio podcast voice. I could tell. That's great. Yeah.
Well, you get blessed with different superpowers, and that's one of mine.
Yeah. So, I know that you're certainly not shy to talk and help educate people about Parkinson's and some of the challenge that many are facing and many more are facing. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about your experience, maybe going back when you learned you were diagnosed with Parkinson's and kind of what's happened since then.
Sure, absolutely. So, it's getting a diagnosis for Parkinson's is sort of a journey. Especially when you're young or you're not an old white male. I happen to be a middle-aged white male, so it was a little bit easier for me. But if you're a woman or a person of color, it's really difficult for doctors and nurses to think about Parkinson's. And so I was collecting symptoms for like 10 years before I got diagnosed. So the first thing that happened is my gait, my walking was out of rhythm. And I sort of have a drop foot and a scrape and slide my foot. And my wife kept noticing, and she mentioned it to me like, you're not lifting your feet. I'm like, I'm trying to. And then my handwriting got really small. I started eating food with my left hand, like I'm using utensils with my left hand without even realizing it. And I noticed that I was typing the whole keyboard with my left hand. And after a while, I couldn't move my right hand to even get into a jeans pocket, the front pocket of my jeans. And I'm like, what is going on? And it wasn't until I got a tremor that my son, who was like 8 at the time, said, Dad, you should go to a doctor. And I said, okay, yeah, let's figure this out. And I didn't think much of it. And my doctor thought it was thought I had MS. And so we went to an MS neurologist. And he was like, no, good news is you don't have MS, but I think you might have Parkinson's, but I can't diagnose you. So he recommended me to another neurologist who said, yeah, you certainly have some Parkinsonism. And I'm like, does that mean I have Parkinson's? And he goes, well, maybe. I'm like, can we get a little bit more, is there like a test we can take to be a little bit more sure on that? And he goes, well, there's only one test we can give right now, and that's an autopsy.
Okay. That's what a great recommendation that is. Huh?
Yeah. I said, well, I'll hold off on that for a while.
Yeah.
And I'll take your word for it, Doc. And the reason he said Parkinsonism, I later found out, is because there's Parkinson's and then there's Parkinson's plus diseases. And so you might have heard of MSA, which is multiple system atrophy, or supranuclear palsy. These are really severe cases of like a Parkinson's related disease, and the Parkinson's plus, the plus means death, like in a short period of time.
Mhm.
Parkinson's itself is usually a very slow advancing, long-term degenerative, progressive disease.
Got it. Got it. So what would you like to hear, help educate our listeners and maybe try to clear up about people's perception of this disease? What would you like to clear up?
Well, I think the first thing, for me, like when I got diagnosed, I didn't know what it was. And I think that's the biggest issue is education. I didn't know if I was going to die. I didn't know if I was going to lose my job. I didn't know if people were going to want to, like, there's a stigma to it. Like, and like even now, like I walk across the street, if I'm dyskinetic, which is kind of like when you see Michael J. Fox on TV and he's kind of wriggling around a lot,
Right.
moving around, that's a reaction to the medication. That's not even the Parkinson's. We would rather have that reaction than the actual Parkinson's symptom. We would rather have the dyskinesia, but it makes it look like we're drunk when we're walking. And I get stares during the day, and so like, people just don't understand the disease. And I know I certainly didn't. And it is about we just need to educate the population on what it is, which is it's a brain disease, it's degenerative, it's progressive, it's the fastest neurological condition in growing in the world. It's going to double. The number of people with Parkinson's is going to double between now and 2040, which is not too far away. And it'll be, right now we have 10 million people in the world with it. And we'll have 20 million by 2040, and it's not slowing down. And COVID didn't help. And I would say that, especially as you get older and you notice things that are wrong or different as you evolve, different pains or different, just you can't do certain tasks, like, or if you're dropping a lot of glasses or you feel like you're unbalanced, anything that's odd, go to the doctor. Like that's the first thing. My first thing is, whether it's Parkinson's or anything else, for so long, I just resisted going to the doctor. Let me tell you, doctors are my best friend now. Like I talk to doctors all the time, and pharmaceutical companies are my best friend because without them, I couldn't do what I do.
Right.
I mean, they keep me upright.
I have 3 friends in my area here, all who have Parkinson's. And I have to say that each one of them is quite different as it relates to their symptoms. One, I would never know they even had Parkinson's unless they told me. The other one has, shaking going on. The other one, no shaking, but she actually needs a cane to get around. It's just all kind of different. Help me understand that, or help us understand that.
Sure, yeah. Everybody's Parkinson's is different. There are over 40 possible symptoms you can have with Parkinson's. They call it a motor disease or motor disorder, but it's actually a whole body disease. And it really, the hardest part isn't the motor issues. The hardest part are the non-motor issues, the depression, the apathy. Those aren't reactions to the diagnosis. These are actual symptoms of the disease. Whether bladder issues, you're like, I've got pain, my feet when they curl up, it's called dystonia, and lots of cramping and tightness, and like all these things that are happening inside your body that nobody else can see.
Right.
And that's kind of the common, where we as a Parkinson's community, when I meet others, they're going through many of the same non-motor issues that I'm going through, but our motor issues could be totally different. So to the outside, we all look like we're snowflakes, like just like all unique. But then if you look inside of what we're going through, that's what people don't really understand, because they're like, you look great. I'm like, well,
Right.
thanks, but that you feel like crap.
Okay, good. I'm glad kind of cleared that up a little bit. So I know that you and several other professionals collaborated recently on a technical brief that's on your website, which we'll let everybody know how to get to your website soon, because a lot of great information on there. But it's called Parkinson's Disease, a Public Health Approach. And you have a section in there that's titled Disease Prevention and Risk Reduction.
Yeah.
Can you maybe give us a little overview of that? I know hopefully people will go and read it, but give us a little overview.
Well, sure. Yeah. And as it relates to Parkinson's disease, the WHO, the World Health Organization, who we collaborated with on this, has pretty much been hands off Parkinson's until now, which is because it's now the leading, the fastest growing brain disorder in the world. They've taken note. And so we put this together over the course of COVID, actually, between 2020 and this year. We just released it last week. And what this says here is that this growing public health challenge requires prevention efforts, but the healthcare workers, policymakers, don't understand the disease enough to do, so we need to educate them first. And then there's a misnomer that Parkinson's, because there are there's genes that they're finding, that they think it's hereditary, like it's genetic, but it's not hereditary. Only about 10% of the cases are actually passed down through lineage. The other 90% are just sort of naturally, it's where you are predisposed to the Parkinson's when you're born properly, and then you face an environmental issue that triggers it. And they say, the body loads the gun and the environment pulls the trigger, is how they sort of explain it. And so what we need to be looking out for is, are we protecting ourselves from pesticides, for instance? In America, there's a chemical pesticide that's used quite frequently by farmers. It's called paraquat. It's banned in 40 countries around the world, including China. And it's made in the UK, but the UK doesn't allow anybody to use it. A teaspoon of it will kill you. And we put 14 million pounds of it on our crops every year. So and just last year, the government reapproved the use of it through the agency that approves this
Right.
part of Parkinson's. Is word finding becomes difficult.
Right. No, that's fine. I got it.
And so now the Michael J. Fox Foundation and many of the other groups are now suing to reverse that, because not only did they renew it, they loosened the terms of how they can use it, which is ridiculous. The air pollution's an issue. Industrial solvents. There's a trichloroethylene is something that is linked to Parkinson's onset. It is an industrial solvent. They use it as like an industrial cleaner, and it's used in also in dry cleaning. But in the early 70s, they were using it to decaffeinate coffee. So
Wow.
think about that. Wow. Boom.
So a lot of these things you're bringing up, I mean, can people avoid this? I mean, you're saying that they're still using it on the crops and all that.
Well, yeah, I know. So it doesn't affect everybody. So that's their argument. It's like, well, you can't prove that it's linked to Parkinson's because everybody who's been exposed to it doesn't have Parkinson's. But that's not how Parkinson's works either. Like So what you need to do is, if you're using that, you need to make sure you have the proper equipment. Just like with COVID, you need to make sure you had your mask and it had to be a certain level. And like, we need to make sure we have the safety precautions in place, which is why we're saying, like, listen, we have to have higher standards on, how they're growing our food. And they, the makers of paraquat are embattled into a bunch of lawsuits right now in the US, and class action suits. And they've got a ton of money. And so oftentimes money, reigns the day. But if you have personal protective equipment, if you're going to, work, if you're going to play a physical sport, and a lot of people like to play soccer late in their life, you just kind of watch out for head injuries. You got to be careful about that. Then like, I wouldn't they say doctors will tell you, concussions can be a big issue for Parkinson's. It can trigger Parkinson's. And so you'll see football players, you'll see soccer players because they had the ball, you'll see hockey players, and they get it at an alarmingly greater rate because of all the hits to the head.
That could affect a lot of things, not just to bring on other.
So it just needs to be sort of a rethink of how we approach life.
Right.
And what we're willing to accept in our life, what risks are we willing to accept? And then we need to take action. We need to be advocates for ourselves, both to our doctors and to our governments.
Yeah. Great. So Larry, we're going to take a real quick break, I promise you, just to recognize our sponsor. And when we come back, I want to talk more about PD, Avengers, and all the great work you're doing there. So do you know anybody who may be concerned about an older driver? Well, Senior Care Authority's Beyond Driving with Dignity program is a facilitated self-assessment program for older drivers. This program has been designed to serve as a vital tool to facilitate older drivers and their families as they make appropriate decisions regarding the future of one's safe driving career. If the individual is a safe driver, an advisor will provide him or her with strategies on how to remain a safe driver as they progress through the aging process. If driving retirement is the appropriate decision, then the individual and their family are offered possible alternatives, resources, and a specific plan to ensure a smooth and successful transition from the driver's seat to the passenger seat. To learn more, you could go to www.beyonddrivingwithdignity.com or call 877-907-8841 to connect with a Senior Care Authority advisor in your area. We're back with Larry Gifford, who's president and co-founder of PD Avengers, which we're going to learn more about right now. So Larry, tell us more about PD Avengers. What was the catalyst of starting it, and how can people learn more?
Great. So it started with a new book that came out right at the beginning of COVID called Ending Parkinson's Disease, A Prescription for Action. And if you know anybody with Parkinson's or you have Parkinson's and you've not read that book, it is the best book that I've ever come across as far as the comprehension of understanding the disease and how to prevent it. We actually created a book group around this book because there was many of my friends from around the world. They were reading it, and there were some organizations that were wondering what the people of Parkinson's thought of it. So we put together this little club of 12 people, and we talked about the book, and we did it for like every week back when people were really excited to connect with Zoom and whatnot. And we talked to the authors, and one of the authors came on after a couple of weeks, and he goes, guys, really appreciate your interest in the book and everything, but it is a prescription for action, not talking. So at that point I felt, let's go do it. And so, and the PD Avengers was actually just a joke because we blind copied people into the meeting, so they didn't know who else was there. And when they arrived, it was pretty prominent people within the PD community, and they're all looking around like, oh, we've never met. That's great. We feel like a superhero convention. And somebody goes, no, we're like the Avengers. And somebody says, no, we're the PD Avengers. And so I just wrote that down on top of the notes for the first meeting when it stuck. We're also officially registered as a nonprofit under the name Global Alliance to End Parkinson's Disease Association, which actually translates better in foreign languages than PD Avengers.
Right. Well, how does it differ then compared to other associations in the Parkinson's area? What are you trying to accomplish either differently or are there similarities at all?
Yeah, it's a really unique, I don't think there's another organization like it in the world. What we've done is we have individual members. So anybody, whether you have Parkinson's or not, whether you have a family member with Parkinson's or not, you could be a medical professional, you could just be a person that just wants to help us, end Parkinson's. Anybody can sign up and it's free at pdavengers.com. And then you'll get updates on how you can become an advocate. We have different like working groups. So we're working on, we have 3 pillars: wellness, advocacy, and research. And so and there's 3 co-founders. So I oversee advocacy. My buddy Tim Haig, who is a finalist, or who actually won season 1 of Amazing Race Canada after he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. He oversees wellness. And Dr. Sonia Mather, who was a family physician and had to retire because of Parkinson's early, is overseeing our research department. And so it's really about informing people about what's going on and then trying to find solutions to things and proposing that to people. And just like with the WHO technical brief, that's something that we really pushed for, and with the WHO, and made headway pretty quick on that. We are a global organization, and so we have over 100 global organizational partners. So the Michael J. Foxes of the world, the Davis Phinney Foundation, Parkinson's societies, and the Parkinson's foundations, and all over the world. And what we do is we sit like a net over all these, and we bring them together for collaboration purposes. So they've all agreed to be PD Avenger organizations, and they've all agreed to meet once a month, and they've all agreed to collaborate on an annual campaign where we're all saying the same messaging, but we can execute that through our own brand. So for instance, if we're talking about stigma, that can, but you're about research, how does it, what are the stigmas around research? I don't have the time, or I can't afford to take off work, or I don't, I want, people just don't participate in research a lot because for a number of reasons. And then there's stigma around the wellness stuff and the yoga, or maybe you've never meditated before. And so there's all sorts of ways that you can address that. So we try to give this, we think globally, but we act locally.
Yeah, got it. So how can we help? How can our listeners help?
Well, go to the website, sign up to be a PD Avenger. And it's, again, pdavengers.com. And everybody has a superpower. So I'm a communicator. I've been on the radio for 30 years. I'm a storyteller. I've got the podcast. And so I believe that whatever your strength is, we can use it. Whether that's for advocacy, whether that's for, if you're great at social media, like we're just looking for people who want to help out. We're going to be doing a state-by-state campaign with the Fox Foundation on hopefully banning paraquat state by state. And so you can participate in that. And there's all sorts of ways you can get involved. Or you can just sign up and with your support and get the newsletters and not do anything. And that's advocacy too. By signing up, you're an advocate.
Right.
Automatically, because you're learning more, and you'll probably disseminate some of the links and stuff to some of your friends. It's just having that knowledge makes you an advocate.
That's great. So, unfortunately, we only have just a few minutes left. Maybe we could finish up with the question of your podcast as well as PD Avengers. I mean, I learn a lot in doing this podcast. I learned a lot today talking to you. All right. And so that's, I love doing the podcast because I learn a lot and it helps educate people. Talk to us about what you've learned through your podcast as well as.
Yeah. So when Life Gives You Parkinson's has been a great journey. And it started a year after my diagnosis. And part of the reason was Dr. Dorsey, Dr. Ray Dorsey, who's one of the authors of that book. I heard him on a podcast, and he said, if people with Parkinson's don't start sharing their stories, there's no way we'll get enough attention to raise enough money to do anything about it. And at that point, I hadn't told very many people when I heard that. And I thought, oh my God, I'm a storyteller. I have access to radio and TV, across Canada. With my job, I'm the national director of talk radio for a company called Chorus Entertainment. So I had access to distribution, and I wasn't doing anything. So I decided at that point that I was going to share my story on World Parkinson's Day, and then I launched the podcast, and it's been remarkable. The feedback has been great. The connections to the community have been amazing, and the opportunities that have come from that have been frankly humbling. I'm on the Michael J. Fox Foundation Patient Council. I have just been invited to speak at the the WPC, which is the World Parkinson Congress, next year in Barcelona, Spain. And so it gives me a platform to tell other people's stories too, and which is great because it's a huge community. And like I just talked to May Ali about her dad, Muhammad Ali, and so we're gonna have that one out soon. And we're just learning about how people deal with Parkinson's, how they find hope when there's hopelessness, and we even get into the meaning of life.
Well, great. Well, I thank you for all that you do.
Well, it's my honor, and it's my I always thought that radio was my life's purpose, and I realize now radio was preparing me for what is my true purpose in life, and we are going to end Parkinson's.
Yeah. Well, I believe it. I believe you, and I believe that that's going to happen. And
well, thanks,
Larry.
I look forward to seeing your membership, Frank.
Yeah, you got it. You'll see it. Larry, thanks so much for joining us on Boomers today. Thanks. I really appreciate it. Everybody, please be safe, and we'll talk to y'all next week.
You've been listening to Boomers Today with Frank Sampson. To learn more about today's show, visit boomerstodayradio.com and join us next time for another edition of Boomers Today.